Hello, this is Kevin Shelton, and I would like to welcome you to our Faculty Research Assistant training. In this recording, we will talk about how to be a good faculty research assistant, how to work well with your professor and do your job efficiently and effectively. In our second session, recorded by my colleague Marindel, we will talk about how to do research using some specific examples in particular databases. But without further ado, let us proceed with this first section. Rules for research assistants. Rule number 1, as it states very clearly here on our illustration, treat your assignment as if your professor were either a managing partner or your firm or a client. Always be professional. Always assume that you are going to give your all with respect to this work. It is truly a job. Now, what is the scope of your project? You've probably heard of the old journalistic questions to ask when writing a news story. Who, what, when, where, and why. Usually they say how. In this case, we'll say why. But this is the scope of your project. These are the questions you're going to want to ask, and be sure are clear in your mind when you are establishing what you're going to be due for the faculty member. I cannot stress this enough. It is important to be organized and systematic in any endeavor of legal practice, and this is a good place to start. Rule number 2 is to find out exactly what your professor expects from you, and make sure that those expectations are not only clear to you, but sometimes that they are clear to him. Sometimes or her, sometimes even the faculty are not entirely clear about what they expect of you. So, and we'll get to this again a bit later, restating the expectations is extremely important. Next, ask, what are my deadlines? How often should we meet? You need to find out really when the work is due. It's very important, obviously, and what kind of meeting or feedback the faculty member wants. It is also important to know how much time and effort you should be putting into the project. Sometimes faculty even have a somewhat limited budget, so they can't necessarily have you putting 40 hours per week into something like that, even assuming the ABA rules or other law school restrictions on student work allowed it. You need to know how much time and effort you're going to be putting into your particular project. The next thing you need to know is how your research should be memorialized. In other words, in what form is your work product going to take? Is it just going to be an oral report? Is it going to be a formal memorandum? Do you have particular materials that you need to deliver? Be clear about this. Likewise, be clear about what ways in which your professor prefers for you to communicate and how often. Email, personal meetings, telephone calls, any mix. Make sure that the communication is spelled out clearly. Rule number 3 is to be sure that you articulate your legal question or whatever your research question is. Note, as it says here, it can change as your research progresses. You always need to be aware of the jurisdiction in which you're doing your research. If your professor is only interested in New York cases, then you need to focus specifically on New York cases. Sometimes, however, it'll be a different state. Likewise, is it legal matters that have to do with civil or criminal matters, public, private, substantive or procedural law, or something else altogether. Finally, and this is one of the most important things, I mentioned earlier the need for organization. All right, you need to develop a research plan. For instance, do you need statutes, case law, regulations, administrative decisions? Do you need to get secondary materials such as law review articles or other journal articles, encyclopedias, treatises, summaries, and so forth? Did you remember to ask your professor to recommend a resource or a starting point? Often that's the case. It works in practice, asking the assigning partner whether he or she knows a place to start. It also applies here. And don't forget, have you talked with a librarian? That's what we reference librarians are here for, to help you with your research. We certainly do not mind at any time we are at the desk helping you, not only with your class type assignments or journal related assignments, but also your research for the faculty. And again, regardless of the form of delivery, you need to keep track of everything that you do. Essentially keep a research journal. It can be as formal or informal as you like, but you need to keep a list of the search terms that you've used, regardless of whether you're using print or online resources, what books or journals you've used, what websites you have visited, what databases you have used, and the dates that you have visited sites. Odds are you will have to update your research at some point, and this will save you time and effort later when you need to do that. Or it can help you to go back and find information. Again, it also is evidence of what you have accomplished in case you're asked to justify your conclusion, your hours worked, and so forth. All right. So these are the basic structures of how to be a good research assistant, but there are also some general considerations, just personal qualities that you need to bring to your work. Some of this may seem like common sense. It should be, most of it, but nonetheless it bears repeating. Be reliable. Nobody wants somebody who is not reliable, especially because the nature of this sort of work is typically that the professor will make the assignment and say, all right, I want to hear back from you in 2 weeks. He or she doesn't have time to supervise you in most instances, to look over your shoulder and all the rest of it. So he's assuming that you're out there doing the work. So you need to be reliable and out there doing the work. Your professors are also going to assume that you're going to keep in communication with them, that you will ask questions when you're uncertain instead of wasting time having to backtrack, that you will be a self-starter, that you don't need, again, to be prodded and pushed and cajoled to earn your money, that you know to ask for help whenever it's necessary, and also to use common sense when you accept your assignments. Don't take more work than you can handle. You have other responsibilities, your classes, possibly other outside work, extracurricular activities such as journals or law school societies of various kinds, clinics, what have you. Be sensible about how much work you can handle. Don't take on too much. As I've stressed before, and so I won't stress it again, I'll just repeat it, be well organized and have a good research plan. All right? This may not be so much common sense, but it bears mentioning. Be discreet. Professors are often working in a competitive environment where they want to be the first to publish on a particular topic. Now, this isn't like somebody rushing to register a patent before somebody else or publish laboratory research that will shake the scientific world to its foundation, but it is important to the faculty that you not talk about the kind of work they're doing without their permission. It is, it's very important to be discreet. And again, treat it as if it's a real job, because it is. Even if you think, oh well, this is just sort of a part-time gig, it's still important. It's never too soon to learn professional behavior. Part of that entails that if you say you're going to work 10 hours per week, then the professor expects you to work those 10 hours per week for the entire period. So don't go AWOL after the week 3 if you've agreed to work for 12 weeks, all right? And if you do go AWOL, then you'd better have a pretty good explanation. Also, if you have plans to go away during the summer vacation or at other times during the semester, then let the professor know about this when you interview for the position, or at a minimum at the beginning of your period, and not after you've already accepted the job, okay? Because he or she may need you around more often. A good way to test whether you understand an assignment that you've just been given is to ask your professor to listen to your replay. You can say, just to make sure that I understand what it is you're asking me to do, let me say back to you what I think the project entails. Believe me, it doesn't make you look foolish. It makes you look smart and responsible. I would also add that you will be indispensable to your professor. Your professors will love you and write you wonderful recommendations until the end of time if you know how to use the Blue Book. Enough said. As I mentioned before, keep an assignment log where you note a short description of any project you've been given, the date on which it was given, deadlines, the location of your work, whether it's hard copy or stored on your computer hard drive or on a USB drive, and the status of the project. Is it completed? Are you awaiting additional comments from your professor, etc.? Okay. That way, when the absent-minded professor asks you 2 weeks before the start of the semester, where is that research memo you did for me about res judicata in cases revolving replevin for cattle? You'll know exactly when you completed it and where it is in case your professor needs another copy. Again, remember that this is a professional relationship. Be on time for meetings. Meet deadlines. Use proper spelling, punctuation, and grammar in all your communications. And if you don't have enough work to do, then let your professor know. Sometimes they get so occupied with their own projects they may not remember to give you more work or even remember how much they've given you to start. Set clear beginning and ending dates for your employment as a research assistant. As your ending date is approaching, you need to make sure that your professor remembers that it's coming. Note that others prefer, with respect to communication, that you do so in person rather than email or telephone. So be sure, again, you know what they prefer. If they say email is fine, then still, though, don't be shy about sticking your head into their offices from time to time. I'll repeat another important point. Get to know us, the law librarians. It's not to sound conceited, but we are knowledgeable, and we have heard most requests before in some form. Often the librarians have also been working with certain professors here for years, and they may know what the professor means when he or she asks an RA to do X or Y. Finally, never forget that in every interaction with librarians, with school administrators, with classmates, with your professors, you are establishing your professional reputation. So start good habits early. Now, let's talk a little bit about what else we're going to accomplish, ideally, during this introductory research session. With respect to research training, the session is introductory in general. For instance, we cannot concentrate on or teach you how to research in each of your professor's subspecialties. You need to consult your professor's law librarian liaison for subject-specific questions or training, or talk to a reference librarian at the reference desk. If you don't know who your professor's library liaison is, then you need to ask one of the librarians. We can tell you. Also, we cannot cover in detail Lexis Advance, Westlaw Next, or Bloomberg Law during this session. We do assume that there is some familiarity with these systems already, aside maybe from Bloomberg, which is still relatively new. Okay? If you have Lexis, Westlaw, or Bloomberg-related faculty research questions, then again, ask a reference librarian or ask the Lexis, Westlaw, or Bloomberg representatives or student representatives as well who keep hours in the labs. Now, to begin your research, you're often going to want to start with the Law Library Catalog, okay, our online public access catalog, or OPAC. We get to it from here. I'm just going to start from this, this part of the catalog. We can enter search terms by keyword and so forth. I'm just going to go to more options, though, which takes us straight to the guided search. You use this not to find, or only to find books, books or journals, not articles. Okay, specific articles need to be searched for in a different way. The catalog includes book and journal titles, but does not include, as I said, individual articles. So if I go over here to keyword and I type securities regulation, Hornbook, I immediately get a list of relevant titles, okay, as you can see. From keyword, you can also type for the Hofstra Law Review, anything you're trying to find. And if you want to search, you can start over at any time. You can do a guided search, which means you can search multiple fields, such as author and title, simultaneously, or just search for the title of a book or a journal, or search by the author, last name first, okay? If you need to charge books to a professor's account, to borrow library books, for instance, in your professor's name, then the professor needs to send a letter to or email Mary Godfrey Rickards, one of our librarians here, and that will be set up for you. If you want to borrow from Axon in the professor's name, then the professor has to send a letter to Sarah McCleskey, who is the head of access services at Axon Libraries. Ask us if need be. For searches, you really just need to remember for things we don't own that you can find through WorldCat, which is accessible through our main page here. And at this stage, I will turn our session over to Marindel, who will then lead you in some more targeted and practical research exercises. Thank you.